Yeah. Good afternoon. This is the regularly scheduled meeting for the Caldwell Hearing Examiner. It is Wednesday, July 12th, and it is 1:30 p.m. This is a public hearing, and my name is Sabrina Durchi. I will be your hearing examiner for today. I can hear quasi-judicial decisions concerning particular land use applications for the City of Caldwell. During this public hearing process, public oral testimony will be taken from those in attendance and who have signed up to speak. And that sign-up sheet was just that paperwork at the front. If you are interested in signing up, please sign up now. When you testify, you must come to the podium. Please speak into the microphone and state your full name and address. All comments should be addressed to myself and should be relevant to the application. Once the public hearing is open, staff will present their staff report, and then the applicant or the applicant's representative will be given 10 minutes. After the applicant, we will allow for the public to come up and testify, and you will have 3 minutes. Finally, the applicant will be able to come back and have a 5-minute rebuttal to answer any questions that you guys have. After the rebuttal is given, the public hearing will then be closed, and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed, unless there's a vote to reopen the public hearing. We request, and myself, that everyone treats all parties with fairness and respect. Therefore, please be quiet and respectful when other people are testifying. We are required by Idaho State Code to provide written minutes during our public hearings, so please silence your cell phones during the duration of the meeting. Thank you. Okay, so first on my agenda is the consent calendar action item. I believe my last hearing on June 28th, those minutes have been signed? Correct. Okay, great. And we have no old business, so we will be on to our new business item. It's the only item that we have on for today, and that is action item number 1, public hearing, case number SUP 23-000006 from S3 Investments LP on behalf of Tyler Clark, is requesting a special use permit for 6 8-unit multifamily buildings totaling 48 units. This property is zoned R3, and the subject parcel is located at the intersection between Moss and Celeste Avenue in Caldwell, Idaho. Okay, Alex, would you like to start off with your presentation? Thank you so much.
Let's see. Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Alex Jones, Associate Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard. As stated, the applicant is presenting Star Point special use permit. And I would also like to present 3 late exhibits, all those being public responses, which I believe you have received.
I have. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. As stated, this is a special use permit application. The project location is a 3.2-acre parcel located on the southwest corner of Moss and Celeste Avenue. The special use permit is for a multifamily development. This approval is dependent on a future development agreement modification application. This has been conditioned in this application's FCOs, and that development agreement modification will have to go through City Council before this can be approved. Here are pictures of the subject parcel. For development proposal, the applicant is proposing 48-unit apartment. This consists of 6 8-plexes. My math might be a little off there. For amenities, we're looking at shade structures and a playground. Landscaping, applicant is proposing 28% open space, with that being 0.89 acres. That is well above the 10% open space requirement. Here are the elevations for the development. For existing conditions, they have R1 to the north and south, and then R3 to the east and west. For the comprehensive plan, it is designated as high-density residential with low density to the south, west, and north, and then medium density to the east. They're proposing 15 dwelling units per acre. Utilities will be provided. ITD sent out a letter saying they had no comments on this, and we did receive the, it says 4, but I believe it should be 3 public notifications, as one of those was for a different application. Staff finds that this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, aligns with 5 goals and 10 policies, and that if the hearing examiner approves the request, that it be subject to the FCOs. I stand for questions.
Great. Thank you, Alex. I do have a few questions. First, one of the late exhibits on Audrey Eldridge talks about the case coming back in. It had been originally denied. What is the property history? And I'd also like a little bit more information on Dakota Crossing and when that occurred and why this out parcel was never developed. And if that's more for the question for the applicant, just let me know. So,
Madam Hearing Examiner, the applicant can go into more detail. I give a quick overview of it. This was supposed to be Dakota Crossing number 3. They had a development agreement for that. I believe it was a little over 50 townhomes were permitted at the time. The plat expired. They came in with another SUP here for another apartment complex, which was higher density. I believe it was around 70 units. The applicant can confirm that one. That one was denied. They came back, made all the buildings 2-story, and reduced the density. And I think the applicant can answer the rest of the questions a lot better.
Okay. Let's go, Alex, my other follow-up question was, the plat has expired. Do you know when that expiration happened? It's an older plat, correct? Okay.
That is correct. I believe it was before 2010.
And Dakota Crossings phases 1 and 2 have been built out and complete?
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Okay. I don't think I have any other questions at the moment. Did you have the sign-up sheet? Oh, yeah. Hold on. Look at the sign-up sheet. Would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to come up, please? Thank you. State your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Madam Hearing Examiner Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise, representing the applicant, S3. And I'm assuming this will click me around, right? Great. Thank you. So this is a fairly straightforward application, and I will go through some of the history and hopefully answer some of those additional questions. So just to kind of reorient you, 3.21 acres is the total property size, zoned currently R3. So again, we're not asking for a rezone. We're not asking for a comprehensive plan designation change. This is based on existing zoning, existing comprehensive plan designation. It is in a single parcel. That prior plat did expire. We're not proposing a new plat because it will be in single ownership for the multifamily project. And it was mentioned 48 units across the 6 8-unit buildings. This is just kind of to reinforce a couple items. So this is a project where the planning for this and the policy decisions are all largely done. We are relying on the comprehensive planning that is already designated by the city at high density residential. Staff will forgive me or correct me if I'm remembering incorrectly, but I believe that allows up to 25 units per acre for that future land use map designation. We're just a little bit north of Karcher. We're just a little west of Caldwell Boulevard, the I-84 interchange, and we're talking about an area with a lot of retail, employment opportunities. So that's why, in my view, and I think the city was correct to designate this as high-density residential. So the comprehensive plan, again, does show it with that designation. It is an R3, which is intended to provide transition or buffer areas between commercial uses and lower intensive uses, and to provide places for higher density uses. So again, we're not asking for any change to zoning. The project itself has the 6 buildings. I think this is important. We are only proposing 2-story buildings. And that, as I understand, has been a matter of confusion. Folks have been concerned about having 3-story buildings. We've limited it to 2. 45 feet is what's allowed in the zone. We're at 25 feet. Another item that I think is important is that you have existing residential neighbors to the south. So we've oriented this such that we've maximized the distance between our project and those neighbors. As Alex mentioned, on the open space, we're almost triple what is required. We're also significantly above what's required on the parking stalls. And then on the amenities, we have the tot lot and the 2 gazebos. One item that came up through conversations, and this one was the tot lot being somewhat near Celeste. And this is kind of based on the dimensions of the property. We always want to have these kind of amenities central to the project. We don't want them tucked away in a corner. So the location we're showing, which is that brown circle that you can see, is somewhat near Celeste. So one of the items that we did was to add a wrought iron fence along Celeste, just to add a kind of a layer of security there so kids don't go sprinting off towards the road. As the staff report confirms, all the landscaping requirements are met, utilities are available at the site. A benefit is that we'll complete the street section up at Moss. And I think it's important to point out that no waivers are being requested. So with regard to the history, I think I'll talk first about what has been entitled and then talk about what was proposed back in 2022. So what has been entitled, this was part of Dakota Crossing number 3. I don't know when that plat expired, but it's long since expired. And as I mentioned, we're not proposing a new plat with this one because it's not required. But it is entitled, or was entitled, for 57 building lots, and it had 3-story townhomes. So we think that what we've done is significantly reduced that existing entitlement, and that development agreement, although it's timed out, is still on the property because the city would have to go through the steps to actually terminate at that point. So it would be possible to reinstate, I suppose, but our proposal is less than what was previously approved on this. So it went from 57 to 48, and from 3 stories to 2 stories. And so we appreciated staff's comments about that, saying that it's a better match for the single-family neighborhood. So with regard to the other application, I think it's important to clarify that that wasn't us. That was a prior applicant, prior party that had an interest in the property. I think they may have been contract purchasers. I don't think they actually closed on it. And then you had people prior to that in the chain. And so, but my understanding of that one was that it was a 72, it would have brought in 72 units. Okay. And so we're taking this down from that application total of 72, bringing it all the way down to 48. And then that same 2-story limitation. So you have the history of what was approved and what was proposed in either event were significantly below what happened with both of those. I think that's I would say a tribute to the applicant being willing to listen to what some of the neighbors' concerns were and what the city's concerns were when that prior application came through. So when we look at the special use permit approval criteria, there's no evidence to suggest the use would cause damage. Now, I have not seen the last couple neighbor letters, and Alex, I'd ask if we could just take a quick look at those. That would be great. But the agency comments do not show any damage, hazard, nuisance, or detriment. The use obviously is conditionally permitted. It's not in conflict with the comprehensive plan, and staff did a very good job of outlining multiple areas where it precisely complies with it, and public services are available. So we appreciated the staff report, staff's recommendation. We're in agreement with all of the proposed conditions of approval. We're not asking the hearing examiner to make any changes there. So I would just briefly conclude by emphasizing a couple items. This does comply with the existing planning for the site, which we're not asking to change. We're just executing on that plan. We're adding to the variety of housing types with no waivers or modifications requested. We're in excess of the minimum requirements. We meet the SUP criteria, and we're in agreement with the staff proposed conditions. So with that, I know sometimes I have a tendency to speak a little fast, so I'm happy to stop speaking for a second and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Heath. I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
First, what is the price point going to be? Do you have a range? And what's the timeline for construction if you're approved?
Sure. Madam Hearing Examiner, so we'd like to be coming out of the ground next year. So opening probably the year following, and then market rent. So we'll be tracking that. So yeah, market rent.
Heath, I don't know if you were at the neighborhood meeting that was held. If you were, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the meeting and some of the concerns that the neighbors brought up and how you're planning to address some of those concerns.
Yeah, I was not at the neighborhood meeting, but I've been, it's been mentioned to me what, some of the general items, and Taylor will fill in for me, because Taylor's one of the principals here. So, I think some of the questions were some of the typical questions that you hear at neighborhood meetings, like multifamily coming in next to us, what can we do? Part of what we've tried to do is to be proactive even before the neighborhood meeting by, trying to come with a height and a density that learns from the prior application. The wrought iron fence along the play area was one item that came from that as well. Taylor, is there anything else that you would add to that? Okay. Yeah.
Great. One of the things I noticed is that you didn't have any bicycle parking, and I believe that's part of your SUP application requirements. Have you spoke to Alex a little bit about that? And it looks like you have space.
Oh, we have plenty of space, yeah.
So was that just overlooked, or was that?
That's an oversight. We will have the required bicycle parking.
Okay,
yep.
Great.
That is not a matter of debate.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions at this time.
Okay.
So.
Great.
Does Taylor want to come up and speak? I don't know, did you sign up?
Oh, he's good.
Okay, all right, great. Next to speak is Preston Rudder.
Oh, we're good.
Good, okay. And then Christopher Clark would like to speak? No? Okay. Okay. That's all that was signed up in favor. Is there anyone else in favor that would like to speak? I have a James Hirsch who does not want to speak, but it's in neutral. Are you sure? No, don't want to speak. Okay. And then in opposition, I have a David Ravio. Oh, I would have never got that. Would you please come up and speak? Would you like to speak? No? Okay. Judith Barada? Barrett. Okay. Thank you. Please state your name and record, or name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Judith Barrett, and I live at 12456 Karcher Road. My driveway comes out onto Celeste.
Can we do an aerial so we can see where she lives, please? Thank you.
Nowhere around there. I live right directly across from Dakota Crossing.
Okay.
Okay? We've been fighting this now for 2 or 3 years because the traffic, we're having so many problems right now with speeders and traffic. We got this construction going on over there already across from Windsor, and this is a nightmare. I know they've opened the bridge up, and that's just made it worse. We've got people out there at the intersection doing donuts or speeding through there. I've had to get state patrol on them a couple of times because we know a couple of the gentlemen that live back in Windsor. And this is a never-ending thing. I don't know what they consider not a nuisance. More people is going to be a nuisance. So I like the fact that it's gone down in the number.
Okay.
We were initially told this was going to be battered women and children. And I'm understanding now this is not true. That helps a little. I don't know where the entrances, egress and entrances on this thing.
Looks like it's down south at the bottom, coming off Celeste. So there's Moss Streets up north? Okay, so it's coming down from this one access point down there.
You've got one access point?
Yes.
Bad idea. I've been a 911 dispatcher for 10 years. That's a bad idea. One in, one out is not a good plan. I would suggest they put another one on there if this gets approved. Maybe one out on the Moss. But for the most part, is there going to be a fence around the outside of it? Is it going to be like Dakota's? Okay. Again, we've got schools that haven't been built yet. They got the bond approved.
It is,
They're
yeah.
still gonna have that problem. They're still gonna have kids in there going to school.
Mhm.
And they're already overcrowded and sending them out of the area. The irrigation, they're gonna require some kind of irrigation in there for your little public areas. Dakota Crossing right now does not have irrigation because they can't keep that pump running. So just food for
Okay.
thought.
I'll follow up
Okay.
with that, with the applicant, or we can follow up with the
Yeah.
city engineer.
We need
Okay.
some more police out that way.
Okay.
And I know they've got bigger things to deal with, but our safety is critical to us. Okay? That's all I have. Somebody else might have a few other things. That comes up.
Judith, did you attend the neighborhood meeting?
Oh, yeah.
And how did you feel the neighborhood meeting went? And what were some of your concerns the same that you're
Pretty much the
presenting?
same thing. we're
Do you
bringing
think
up.
that in their application, they mitigated anything other than by lowering the density?
They lowered the density and they lowered the height.
Okay, because they were going to do
And,
three-story
yeah,
buildings,
But,
right?
I mean, still, I don't know. I don't know if there's any way around the problems we're having other than more police patrols.
Okay, okay.
Because this is crazy. I shouldn't have to go run a state patrolman down to keep quads from running up down that road at 50 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Okay?
Sure.
We've
Okay.
got a lot of loose dogs through there lately.
Mm-hmm.
More people, more animals. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. Next I had was Ann McBride, who checkmark didn't want to speak. Is that still the case? Absolutely. Please come up. Oh, just state your name and address, please. Thank you.
Anne McBride, I live at 12599 DeMarie Court.
Hold it, pull it
I'll
down.
pull it down.
There you
Okay,
go.
that's better.
Perfect.
DeMarie Court.
Okay.
I'm just repeating the same things the last lady said, but I do have questions about parking.
Okay.
It seems Celeste is a no parking. They do have 2 spaces per apartment, I believe that's what you said. What about, where do the guests park?
Okay.
The only other option I can see is Moss. And right now, Moss is a nightmare. It's like a racetrack. Since it opened, it was wonderful. The bridge opened because it shortens the trip anywhere. But right now, it's a racetrack because our backyard goes on to Moss, and it's constantly all night back and forth. The other thing that I was concerned about was Brittany, is it called Brittany Heights, is in full production right now. They're going to be opening soon, which leads more people. I don't know how many are in that project, but I know it's quite a lot. So you're going to have kids from there, kids from this new proposed building. Where are they going to go to school? Right now, the kids are being bused all over. Are they going to spend their lives on buses? That's kind of unfair to them. So that's basically all I have to say.
Sure. Okay. Did you
Thank you.
attend the neighborhood meeting?
I did.
And did they address some of your, do you feel like they mitigated some of your concerns?
Well, I know somebody mentioned they wanted the playground moved, and I think that's something you did do. But then generally, I thought it was just too many people for that small amount of lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in apartment managing for 29 years, and I know it can get out of hand very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my concern. A lot of people in such a confined space, when there's already overcrowding, there's, as far as the fire department, police department, it seems they can't keep up. And it just seems to be aggravating the problem even more. So,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
Thanks.
for coming up.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, let's see who's next on my list. This person, marked that they did not want to speak. It's David Rabola? Bradley. Oh, that was you. Okay. Did you sign up twice? Oh, yeah, that's fine. Jamie Simmons. Hello, Jamie.
My name's Jamie Simmons. I live at 12498 Moss Lane, Nampa 83651. We live kitty corner to this proposed apartment complex.
Can you show, do you have a clicker or do we have any?
Oh, I do have a button. Yeah, we live right there.
Okay, thank you.
We bought our house back in 2009. At the time, we were surrounded by farm fields, which we loved. Clearly, that's not exactly what we have anymore, but we have been longtime residents for that area. Whenever we bought, it was on a dead-end street, and Moss didn't go through. Currently, the section of Moss right beside us is, I don't remember the correct terms, but basically it's got road access, but it's not wide enough to be a road.
Okay.
So they can't pave it. It's dirt.
I can highlight what you're talking about? Great.
Right in there.
Okay, they just don't have enough right-of-way?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
The city has contacted us to purchase part of our property, and we're not interested in selling for
Mhm.
what they're offering.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't, I mean, our well's over in that area. We use that for our goats, and other livestock that we put over there. Like, for what they're offering, it's not worth it for us to give that property up. On the other side is Tyler's property, and his house is right there. There's no room for him to give up more property.
Across the street from Moss, on Moss Lane, from directly
Right.
across. Okay.
So currently, they can't pave that. So Moss goes from 2 lanes down to 1 lane, up to 3 lanes. Before there wasn't a 4-way stop. Now there is a 4-way stop, but nobody ever stops. Like, we've seen multiple things where people are, almost hitting each other. It's insane when people are trying to turn onto Moss and go down that dirt section. Or somebody, like 2 cars can fit in certain parts of it, but not in all parts. So somebody's got to pull over. And we've got our irrigation drainage right there as well.
See that? Okay.
People are spinning cookies in that area. Like, I mean, it's just the most ridiculous stuff going on. If you go down Celeste towards 55 and you go just down a little bit towards Lake,
Okay.
they shut down another subdivision's entrance not too far from where Celeste hits Highway 55 or Karcher, because of so many accidents. So now we're talking about putting more traffic either onto Celeste, which is going to hit 55.
Okay.
They can go up Celeste and hit Homedale. Homedale at this point, during rush hour traffic, you can sit at that stop sign on Homedale and Lake for 15 minutes. Going any direction. We've got the overpopulation of the schools going on, which is a known issue. I mean, that's not anything new. We've got a lot of residents in this area that have been there long term. Our neighbors next to us, Kirk and Leslie, they've been there for longer than us. Folks across the road, they've been there longer than us. James is down in the corner property. He's been there for quite a while. To go in and add an apartment complex to some of these properties that are more agriculture, like an apartment complex is just not the right fit for right there. I don't feel like that's the right use for this land at all.
Okay. TJ, whole bunch of questions now. Can you talk about a little bit more about Moss Lane's improvements and what's the future plans for that area and
Yeah, Madam Hearing Examiner. So Moss Lane currently, excuse me, in its configuration in front of this out parcel, more or less functions as a single lane unimproved gravel roadway.
Okay.
The city engineer's been engaging with the property owners, as was mentioned, for probably been a couple years at this point.
Okay.
Lots of conversations, trying to negotiate the purchase of that. I don't have specific details on that because I'm not in those conversations.
Sure.
But we've been making some effort to try to get that. For whatever reason, at this point, it still sits in that state.
Okay.
It is pretty narrow through there. The 2-to-1 to 3 lane configuration that was spoken of, it's 2 lanes from the east side of that out parcel all the way out to Homedale, or Midway, out to Midway. So that's kind of a old county 2-lane paved road. And then that basically stops right at their driveway, more or less is where the asphalt stops. And then we have this single lane configuration and obviously the improved state of the other roadways.
Right. Was there any like traffic mitigation as far as like traffic calming? It sounds like it's when they did the expansion for out there.
That was, so Celeste was constructed and Moss. They were both constructed to the city standard requirements for
Okay.
both of those roadways. And just posted at the standard speed limits for any collector throughout the city.
Okay.
The S-curve in itself could arguably be considered traffic calming
Okay.
by traffic engineers.
Sure. Okay. What about Jamie's referencing a project further down the street that was denied access? What
I'm not
project
sure.
is that?
Do you know exactly where it's at? I don't know. Without any more detail, I don't know I could speak to
So
that.
if you take Celeste all the way down to Highway 55, keep going down, and then it is it's that entrance right there for that subdivision has barricades across it. They can't open it up due to,
Onto Karcher Road, direct
Mhm.
access onto Karcher Road. Okay. That makes sense.
So I can speak to that
Can you?
if you want, yeah.
Yes,
So what that was, that's Canyon View Estates. When that was constructed, that was the only development in that area. It was surrounded by private owned fields without any access to anywhere else. So when that project was approved, the connection to Highway 55 was a temporary connection. It has always been intended to be a temporary connection
Okay.
until roadways to the south and or the west were completed. So once those were done through the Peregrine Estates subdivision to the south and gave them another exit,
That's where they're taking access.
that's why that was closed down.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And then one more follow-up question, TJ. What I know for a standard subdivision, what triggers a traffic study? What triggers the requirements for a multifamily development?
So what triggers the requirement would be 500 trips per day
Okay.
or more, regardless of multifamily or single family.
And what are you guys estimating for the traffic count to be for this development?
This should have triggered, and I do believe a traffic impact study was completed on this,
Okay.
which was referenced in the traffic mitigation
I don't
section.
think I got a copy of that.
I would have to check. I'm
Okay.
not positive one was completed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jamie, for your testimony. I really appreciate that. Next, Bruce Winker. Hi, Bruce.
How are you?
Good.
My name's Bruce Winker. I live 12498 Moss Lane. There in the corner, kitty corner from the thing. Biggest problem, the design. Taylor, I didn't make the meeting. Came and met me at my house, explained some stuff to me, showed me the design. Great design for somewhere else. That's really what it is. Going to the roadway, the traffic. Moss is owned by Canyon County Highway District 4. City of Caldwell actually is paid to maintain it. Like he said, it's an old county road. Not wide enough for shoulders or sidewalks. There's so much traffic on it. Like TJ said, goes to my driveway down to a one-lane unpaved gravel road. It opens up to what would be should be a three-way intersection, but as you can see, there where they're developing, and he did say something about extending sidewalks and extending the road when he was, talking about it. But they're on Moss, right now Moss is only actually, what is it, a lane and a half that's paved? Because until that house that you see and these guys' development gets built, they won't improve that road. So you're going from 2 lane, 1 lane to 1.5 lane. Get to the bridge is only 3/4 of the way paved, same reason, until that corner house sells to a developer, Caldwell City won't spend the money on it. I've had multiple conversations with Rob. I'm one of the property owners, me and my wife. When they did this, I actually found out in '09 that they were thinking about putting the road through. And ever since, well, maybe it was 2010, ever since then, I've been talking with Rob. Rob looked at an aerial design, probably this one here, before all the roads were. He cut my drainage off. I literally flood out Moss Road and Celeste because he came in, took out all the drain pipe, and now my water goes into the middle of the intersection, which has already got people that don't stop, flying through there, kids, everything else. And half of it will catch the gutter and eventually go down to a storm drain. The other half goes into your guys' sewer. If year round, I work in Caldwell for an irrigation company. So I know a lot of the sewer guys, I know a lot of the water guys, most of them from work. That area is not designed to add any more. You can talk to TJ about it. The pump house is on the south side of their property, where the road is still unfinished because Marlo and Andrea, they wrote letters where their stalls are, the road's like 1.5 lanes. Same thing, it's never gonna get developed until Marlo and them sell. Aubrey is her name, sorry. The pump house right now supplies 2 different subdivisions, Dakota Crossing and Windsor Creek East.
Can you point out where the pump house is that you're referencing, please?
Down.
Is
so
it like that little building that's right?
Yeah,
Okay.
pull your arrow down just a little bit, right there.
Turnaround is? Okay.
It's right in there. So it feeds the subdivision south. It also goes across that property, feeds the subdivision north. Look on their Facebook, ask these guys probably 3 times a week, 4 times a week. I actually talked to the guy and Pioneer that run that pump house. They hate it. It's not big enough. It's not big enough for what it has. And last I heard, it was actually going to do Brittany Heights. Nobody's going to have irrigation. The apartments ain't going to have irrigation. I did talk to Taylor about that. He said he was going to look into it. Really great design, maybe in 5-10 years. Like, honestly, I don't want apartments there, but definitely writing down not good area. Put them off of some main highway. There's lots of land off of the boulevard, off Highway 55. 55 is supposed to be closing down at the end of this year to do their widening project. It's just going to add more traffic. Not to mention, like everybody said, schools. You got 48 apartments, probably 40 students at least. Most are 2 per house, So there's 100 and other students. Schools are overcrowded.
So, this question for Alex, when did they update the comp plan? Because, the comp plan right now shows us for high-density residential for both this parcel and the parcel to the west of it, correct?
Madam Hearing Examiner, that is correct. It is to this parcel and the parcel to the east of it.
And when was that updated?
That'd be the west.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha.
When was the comp plan, or when was this area?
Well, it looks like it was rezoned to R3 when they originally did Dakota Crossing, which was back in the early 2000s, 2007. But it looks like what the comp plan has it for high-density residential. And I'm just curious when that comp plan update.
I believe that was in 2020.
So recently. Are you guys aware? Were you a part of that comp plan update or knowledge of that update?
Most of the subdivision, like Windsor Creek East, and like I said, I've been talking to Rob. it was out of our area. We never got notices. You know, we could have done better to keep track, but once we found out about like that, basically it was too late. They already told us,
Gotcha.
you know, it started, it's done. But no, we never heard of any comp plan or change on any of it.
Okay, I was just curious if you had any public notice. I do have one more question for you, Bruce, and that's for TJ. So Bruce was talking about some drainage issues, and his original drainage point has apparently been cut off. Can we discuss that a little bit and what impacts that's caused?
Yeah, vaguely. I'm not familiar specifically with this exact corner and how it all runs, so I couldn't confirm or deny whether or not the drainage is disrupted. What I can say is that the statement of Rob having cut off that drainage probably is somewhat inaccurate. The city hasn't actually performed a lot of that work up on the northern side around that. So we built the southern leg of Celeste, that
Okay.
full widening. But the curb and gutter and sidewalk and everything that's built on the north side on the east
Okay.
was part of the requirements for the Brittany Heights subdivision to put in. And so a lot of that, more than likely was accommodated through that design process. There could have been some that obviously tied into our road project, depending on grades and topography, that I don't know of at this
Sure.
point.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that it's not doing that. It just, typically if you're on the other side of a road, you're not impacting a lot of drainage up
Sure.
across the street.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to clarify, especially since Bruce is here. So,
So can I,
yeah, absolutely.
so the main canal is the stone canal. It's to the east of the property. It comes down in front of all the houses on the south, cuts across right there where, my driveway is, goes north, feeds mine. It cut across the south end of my property and ran, about 150 feet to the west and watered that whole field. All the drainage went down and all the way down to, I think that's Dixie Creek. It might be a different creek. Anyways, there's a creek where the bridge is. When you guys started doing sewer, I had Rob McDonald come out and show him, one, the damage that the contractors had done to my property, to the fact that they're pulling my drain ditch out. And he said, his exact words were, "Well, I didn't see it on Google. It's all covered in weeds." And I says, "Well, I don't really care what you've seen. Why didn't you get off your butt and come out here?" I used some other choice words, but he says, "Well, for right now, we'll just let it be. As long as you're getting water, there's nothing that, I mean, it's truly the responsibility. If you look in the Idaho statutes, it goes from my property, once it hits your property A, it has to go to property B through your property. You're financially responsible." So I don't care legally. There's nothing, I mean, it's all on you guys. You got to take care of it. I'm showing you as a safety hazard that it is here. You got, I don't know, it's actually 10 miles an hour through that dirt road. 540 feet from the east to the stop sign is 10 miles an hour. If you can find somebody that does 10 miles an hour, give them a frickin' badge, because nobody does anything less than 40. So when it's wet out there, you can look it up. I've had county cops out at my house. I'm still county, not city, for washing away the roadway of Celeste and Moss. Like.
Well, maybe you could follow back up with TJ or Rob after.
The last two times I called Rob and left a message, he hasn't called me back. So, but they don't care. Last true conversation I had with Rob was, I'm going to have an appraiser come out, appraise your property. They want to take my well. They want my well to have my well moved over $100,000. They wanted to pay like $40-some thousand and make me annex into city. And I says, you know, if I don't take your offer, what's the options? He goes, nothing. We'll leave it like this forever until you tell us that you'll sell.
Okay.
So that was the last conversation I had with Rob.
Okay.
That was last year.
All right. Okay. Well,
So.
thanks, Bruce, for your information.
No problem.
I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hello. My last name's Black. I'm signed up.
Are we missing the sheet? Would you come up to the podium then, please?
I signed up over here and
Oh, okay.
had somebody who didn't want to speak, and I'm right next to it on this.
Oh, okay.
My name's Donald Black. I live at 12677 Delphia Street, Caldwell, Idaho, Windsor Creek East. I've had over 30 years of property ownership in more than one state. I've seen what happens when high density goes into single-family housing. I've watched property values drop, which is the tax base drops. Means salaries might go down. This is looking at it from a government employee, and believe me, I was. In my neighborhood, and I live in Windsor Creek East, on the western half.
Can you show me on the area where Windsor Creek is? Can we zoom out a little bit? Thanks.
Celeste and Homedale.
Okay. So you live in that subdivision
I
right
live
there?
in that area just down from Homedale. If you come over, there's Homedale right up there. That's Homedale. Yeah, I live, that area.
Okay.
The gentleman who lives in the house that you've got the pointer at is a combat vet of the armed forces on the northeast corner. I live down at Bethany and Delphia. I'm the second house in on the south side. When I come out, I'll come out and I'll cross over into the CBH or the Brittany Heights so I can get up to Homedale so I can see traffic. At the corner of Celeste and Homedale, that house comes right up onto Celeste, onto Homedale, and you can't see what's coming from the east. And when it's rush hour, don't go that way. It's a risk, particularly since rush hour is when all the construction people are leaving at the same time, which is the big rigs. So I'll come down, I'll come out, or I'll come down Celeste. I will not go to Karcher, not during rush hour. Too much traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves me the dirt road on Moss.
Oh, the one that
And
we
I
were discussing,
understand
sure.
the problem with that dirt road. There are times I have to take it because of medical appointments for me or my wife. But as other people have said, they have seen things happen with the cars doing the donuts and everything else with the new expansion on Moss coming up to Celeste. Last week, I was coming down and I looked to the right and there's a bunch of kids, all junior high, high school kids, walking down Moss, going west towards Lake. Most of those kids live in Windsor Creek. So now you have Windsor Creek East, Brittany Heights, Dakota Crossing, all single-family housing. Windsor Creek's expanding. It's going from 120 to 150 to over 250 units. Got Brittany going in at almost 100 units. Windsor Creek's done. Why are we putting high-density housing, effectively high-density housing, into a single-family area? We already have enough problems with the kids. And like the others have said, I've got neighbors whose kids are bused away from their home elementary schools to go somewhere else. And there's more and more buses showing up. If this was high density, I call it high density, and it was being sold as condos, ownership title, I wouldn't be as opposed as I am. But another reason for opposition, Fire starts in one of those buildings, you have one entrance off the narrower of the two roads. Design needs to be redone. Firefighter, if the fire chief says it's okay, he better be thinking about the safety of his men and the people he's got to take care of.
Thank you, Mr. Black. I appreciate it.
Thank
for
you.
Your comments. That kind of leads into my other question for TJ. Have they thought about another fire access point, like an emergency fire access point onto Moss?
Yeah, so when we review that, for especially multifamily type complexes and
Sure.
stuff, that is left in the arms of the emergency services
Mm-hmm.
and specifically the fire marshal,
Right.
Caldwell Fire. So if he hasn't
I didn't
required one,
I didn't see anything.
I didn't see one in the engineering staff report. I don't know if they've issued specifically, if fire's issued anything. If they haven't required one, we wouldn't. We would leave that in emergency services.
Right up to their,
Their expertise.
and we don't have access to the fire chief or anything to question them on this right now. I think my other question, follow-up question, is on the traffic study. So I didn't get anything. Was a traffic study done? Yes? No?
I don't believe so, from what
Okay.
our conversation has led to.
Okay, so what triggers the traffic study for multifamily? You said how many units?
500
500.
trips per day.
Okay,
I would have to look up what the generation is on
okay,
multifamily to
Okay.
figure out what that calculated out to.
okay,
When this was done, it was looked at, not
Sure.
by myself, but and deemed not necessary.
sure, okay, okay. Was there anyone else in opposition that wanted to testify before I let the applicant come back up for the rebuttal period? No? Okay. Heath, would you like to come back up?
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise. So I'll just try to work through a list, and then obviously if there's stuff I've missed, please stop me. So irrigation was an item that was mentioned. We have an irrigation delivery point on our southeast corner, essentially where
That
our
pump house is
access
at? Okay.
is. And we have been in contact with Pioneer. Those conversations are well underway. We know that, for example, there's an internal easement that needs to be relocated and that delivery relocated. That requires Pioneer's permission. That's not like just moving a pathway. You actually have to have the irrigation district's permission to do that. So we're going to be finalizing that with construction drawings, but that's all very much underway. Single access point. We did have conversations directly with the fire department about that. You do have a letter dated 6/2 in the staff report from Caldwell Fire. It does not require an additional access. We were told an additional access is not necessary. Based on my understanding of Appendix D of the fire code, that would be based on a couple of items. One would be driveway length. We really are not very long. And second, we're sprinkled. And so under Appendix D of the fire code,
Okay.
once you're
providing
sprinkled,
Sprinkled, okay.
correct.
And that you would have access, fighters would have access on Moss as well to access those.
So currently, there's not an access shown there because fire didn't request one. We don't
No,
have.
I'm just saying direct access if they parked on Moss.
Oh, sure.
to the
Yeah.
buildings.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, go
No,
ahead.
sorry, I misunderstood your question. But yes, the fire has provided comments. That's been specifically discussed. It does meet fire code. Fencing, wrought iron on the east, privacy fencing on the west and south.
Okay.
Let's see. Traffic impact study. So Morgan and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think city code says traffic impact studies once you get above 100 p.m. peak hour trips. And we would be below 100 p.m. peak hour trips with only 48 units. That's my understanding. That's under city code 10-1001. So that's my understanding why a traffic impact study wasn't required.
Engineering will be looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
The question of Moss Lane is an interesting one. So the roadways have, around this area has been mentioned. Moss Lane has been completed and punched through. Celeste has been completed and brought down to Karcher. So these area roadways function. There is capacity. We've looked, you have the engineering comments. They're going to apparently follow up on that, on the question that was asked. But when it comes to that expansion of Moss Lane, the way I see that is an impossible condition for us to have an impact on. It's a third-party owner that is already engaged with the city. And so, while we appreciate that and we would love to see that resolved as well, it's not something that's within our power to address. And then I guess finally, I would just kind of go back to this question of density and multifamily. I do a lot of these hearings all over the Treasure Valley and beyond. I've been doing this it's getting close to 20 years at this point, which just seems a little strange. Housing is housing is housing. We need housing that accommodates the person who wants to live in the 1-acre McMansion. We need housing for the people who are moving up and doing their half-acre thing or their quarter-acre thing. We need housing for the people who live on the postage stamp, and we need housing for the people who live in multifamily. When I came back to Idaho, I grew up in southern Idaho. When I came back, as a recently graduated law student and being a law clerk, I needed multifamily. I lived in an apartment complex for a couple of years. I did not bring down the property values of the neighbors. And that is an important thing here. So the city took all of this into account when it created its planning. And this area is designated for high density residential. We're at 15 units per acre. Again, as I mentioned, high density residential goes up to 25. So really the question here is not whether it should be multifamily. The question is, does our design work? Do we meet the special use permit factors? And, I think that we've established through the course of the process here that it does. So with that, I'll answer any follow-up questions.
Sure, thank you. It looked like Anne had a question concerning parking requirements and guest parking. If you could address that, please.
Yeah, so the code requirement, if I get this right off the top of my head, I think it's 72. So we're at 96. So we're well above what code requires for parking. What that means is that the city's determined that the typical, traffic or parking generation is something less than 2 per apartment. By going up to 2, we are creating additional parking that would accommodate that sort of thing. When you're talking about a multifamily project, you're also not going to have 30 people showing up for a Super Bowl party. These are going to be, it's relatively smallish units, and 2 parking stalls per unit should be more than adequate to address it.
One of the things is the schools has been brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been in contact with Joey with the Valley View School District to discuss this application with him?
Yeah, and we have not received back any comments on this one. And so I know that that's been an interesting conversation over the past few years. We're thrilled that Valley View got the bond issuance, well past time. The record does not reflect anything from Valley View School District at this point saying that there's not the ability to service these students.
Okay. And then I think my final question that was brought up is drainage. What are you guys planning for on-site drainage?
Is your question with regard to what type of engineering or?
No, just, what are your plans? Do you have a swale up front? I remember seeing something for drainage.
Yeah, so there is a seepage bed, yep, there it is, in the northwest corner that you can see. So that's going to be, and we will be accommodating all of our drainage on site.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Heath.
Thank you.
TJ, did you have any traffic numbers by chance?
So per code, it's 100 trips per day, which this is under. That's the trigger.
So there's 48 units.
Peak trips.
So they're thinking there's how many trips each unit's going to create?
I'd have to look at the trip generation manual. I don't calculate that on a daily basis.
Sure, of course not. So here are my thoughts. The site is zoned R3 and it has been designated for high-density residential. However, I am concerned about the traffic and I would like to get some more numbers by engineering to understand that a little bit better.
Could I jump in real quick?
Sure.
We were just going back over the engineering letter, and actually, engineering did do that evaluation. It's 52 vehicles per PM peak hour traffic flow. It's on page 4 of the engineering report. And again, the traffic impact study threshold per code is 100 per PM peak hour.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alex, could we condition or could we have them do a little bit more traffic analysis before we continue the hearing? I just want to understand the impacts that it's going to have on that intersection. Is that something that we can do internally, or is it just, if the threshold is that, then that's it? We don't take in consideration other outstanding.
Yeah, so, code doesn't provide us with the ability, per se, to just require impact studies that don't meet the thresholds that are outlined at 100 trips per day. So this has been calculated out to 52 trips per day, which is basically half, so well underneath what the threshold would be for a traffic impact study.
Sorry, I apologize, Madam Hearing Examiner. I think maybe one other item to throw into that mix is that engineering did require us to pay I won't use the magic word of impact fee, but a proportionate share type fee to improve area intersections.
Okay.
Which ends up being, I think, in the range of $40,000, $50,000. I don't recall what the exact calculation is. So in addition to being below the threshold for a traffic impact study, and a new traffic impact study, I know you've experienced this, to order one right now would take
a while. That's, yes.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we can look at what our overall impact is on area intersections, which engineering did do that analysis. It was essentially a 7.5% analysis.
Okay.
And so they came up with this identification of, okay, you're going to spend $400,000 for a regular intersection. If I'm getting these numbers wrong, tell me. But $400,000 for a typical intersection, we're 7.5%. You then contribute that an equivalent, either build 7.5% of an intersection or contribute the equivalent fee.
Okay.
Which is what we've agreed to do.
That's the $40,000 that you guys agreed.
Yeah.
And that will be part of the development agreement, I'm assuming, if that proceeds to council?
No development agreement on this one because it's just a special use permit. It's a condition of the special use permit. So when we pull our building permits, I anticipate that's when city would require that payment.
And just to follow up, TJ, so that those funds, will that be directly for this area or will it be in the general fund for all of Caldwell?
So when mitigation fees are collected, and the way he laid that out is correct. So when a traffic impact study isn't triggered, there's still trip generation, right? There's still an impact on the roadways, and so there's an offsetting cost in the traffic mitigation fee. So to answer your question, there is, I believe it's a 1.5 mile radius of where those fees could be used. So we could be collecting fees from another location that per se isn't Star Point, right? Mm-hmm. Where the intersection right outside of that development has already been improved. There are no funds to put there, but that's going to create an impact, say, here. And we could use, if it's within that radius, we could use a part of those funds to fix this. So it will go in the immediate area to relieve traffic congestion caused by this development.
Okay. And that's collected, remind me when?
In this scenario, that would be required prior to the first certificate of occupancy being issued for the building. So prior to any traffic impact really being established out there outside of building construction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I don't believe I have any more. Does anyone else have any other comments? Staff, Alex, CJ? We're good? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing, and with that information of the mitigation fees, and since we're under the threshold for the traffic requirements, I will not request a traffic study. And with that, I will go ahead and approve the application with the conditions listed in the staff report. Thank you. And with that, we'll close the public hearing. It's 2:35 p.m. I know, that's yeah, funny about the generation like that. Yeah, I do. Oh, Alex, I forgot. You added that condition for the bike. The bicycles, or are you just gonna have them update it? He did on the record say that he was gonna. Okay. Okay, perfect. So do you think, like in the future, can I require a traffic study if that, or is it, if it's just against code, then it's? Okay.
Yeah, just this trip, and then my family's going to yours, my kids, and all our kids' ages.